So I wanted to do a video today about folks that are in Chapter 13 cases and liquidation issues that come up. And liquidation can be a really scary word, I get it, when we're talking about your assets. But fortunately or unfortunately, right now a lot of folks who are coming to me to try to file a Chapter 7, they simply just have too much equity in their homes. And they can't file it because if they do, they're going to lose their home. And I've said this in other videos, but I'll say it now. People I don't know if they're reading bad stuff online, but they think that they're going to fight with the Chapter 7 trustee. A Chapter 7 is literally called a liquidation bankruptcy. Whatever the trustee's real estate agent comes and says your house is worth, yep, that's what it's worth. And if they can put it on the market and get it for that, yep, that's going to work. So nobody cares about your appraisal. Nobody. The judge doesn't care. Unfortunately, I can't care. Trustee doesn't care because their real estate agent said, oh, we can market this. We can get that property sold. And so you have to be very, very careful. So a lot of folks, and if you're one of my clients, I'm not trying to scare you, but I need you to be aware, like you can lose your home if you do a Chapter 7. So when we look at Chapter 13 bankruptcies, we also have to consider the equity. And what is done is called a liquidation analysis. And so sometimes people will go, well, okay, well, I'll file 13, but I can only afford to pay this. This is all I have. It doesn't work like that if you have assets, because here's why. An asset is something that has value, and whatever I can't protect with your exemptions of that asset, then that portion that's unprotected, we have to then agree to pay at least this amount back to your unsecured creditors over the course of 5 years in a Chapter 13. So it's called a liquidation analysis. It's a little bit more detailed than what I just did with my hand, but that's basically the gist of it. So now, the other thing you also need to understand is sometimes people can't afford to be in bankruptcy, and I know that sounds so bad, but it's true. And a perfect example is, some of my clients are older people. They've been so good and they've paid off their homes, right? But then they've also been running up credit card debt, living off credit cards. And so when it gets real and they start getting sued, they're like, oh, okay, I need to file a bankruptcy. And I can file a bankruptcy and I can stop those folks and I can restructure it, but I've only got 5 years to do it. So, sometimes the payment that you have to pay because of the equity in your home, it may be too much for you and maybe you can't afford it. But bankruptcy is not, bankruptcy is a court of equity. They're going to be fair to all parties. And if you have all this equity sitting in your house, then the logic is, well, you should sell your house, pay your bills, and get something, that you can afford. And I realize that's a very flippant way to say it, but that is the way the law is going to look at it. And I mean, as an attorney, my job is to tell you what to expect. And I get really frustrated. I see attorneys, and I don't know if it's because they don't have the experience or they're just trying to get anybody to come in and file bankruptcy, but you can tell that their clients are really blindsided when they get this. Unfortunately, my job is to tell you, not unfortunately, my job is to tell you the truth and to be real with you and to provide you options. That's my job. And based on my experience, what I think we can do, how we can frame things, and how to operate within the law. So that is my job, and that's where my expertise comes in. But at the end of the day, sometimes there's just, I'm not going to be able to change what your repayment portion is because of the equity that you have in your property. And that's also why I tell folks, you better, you got to be honest with me and tell me what you have, because eventually it's going to come out. And if you don't disclose things, especially in Chapter 7, you will lose them. I mean, perfect scenario is folks will file a Chapter 7 and just not mention that their name is on their mama's house. Well, my mama put me on the house because she's afraid something will happen to her. I get it, but your name is on the house. You now own a portion of that house, and you have now probably created a situation where the Chapter 7 trustee is going to sell your mom's house because you didn't list it and you have way too much equity in the property. So that is really not a fun conversation to have with somebody. And that's also why I stress, you got to tell me everything. It's not my job to be Sherlock Holmes and figure it out. You got to tell me. So Be very, very careful when you are filing bankruptcy that you understand what a liquidation analysis is. That's why, I always tell folks, that's why Chapter 13s are great. Nobody sells your home in Chapter 13. If you don't like what's going to happen or what the trustee or even the judge, says, well, no, this is what we're going to do, then you can say, okay, I'm not playing anymore, and you can dismiss your case. So you don't have that option in Chapter 7. So just be aware of what a liquidation analysis is in a Chapter 7 and then what a liquidation analysis is in a Chapter 13. At least in the Chapter 13, you will maintain control over it. You'll also be able to, in terms of what the valuation is, at this juncture, the court will take your appraisal. They will look at your documents in a Chapter 13 where they won't in a 7. So it gives the power, in my opinion, it shifts the power back to the debtor and lets the debtor say, okay, no, this is what my appraisal says, this is what the comps say, and this is what we're going to use for the analysis. And most of the time, it's not even a challenge with the trustee, they're just needing you to prove it. But a Chapter 7 trustee is totally different. They have their own appraisal team, real estate agents, because they also get a commission when they find assets they can sell. So they have a vested interest to have your assets as valuable as possible. So these are all things you really, really need to take into consideration. But if you have any questions about bankruptcy, about eligibility, anything like that here in Georgia, don't hesitate to reach out to me.